Good evening. I'm Michael Kirsty, and I'm the Executive Director of the Friends of Chamber Music of Troy, New York. On behalf of Friends of Chamber Music, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's performance and context conversation with the Verona Quartet and saxophonist Stephen Banks. I am joined this evening by members of the Verona Quartet, violinist Jonathan Ong, violist Abigail Rojansky, and saxophonist Stephen Banks. Acclaimed as an outstanding ensemble by the New York Times, the Verona Quartet has established itself among the most distinguished ensembles of the chamber music scene today. The quartet serves as on the faculty of the Oberlin College and Conservatory of Music as a quartet in residence. In addition to this position at Oberlin, the quartet has also held residencies at Nova Scotia's Lunenburg Academy of Music Performance, North Carolina's Chamber Orchestra of the Triangle, and the Encore Chamber Music Institute. Saxophonist Stephen Banks aims to bring his instrument to the heart of the classical music world. He is driven to program and write music that directly addresses aspects of the human experience and is an active and intentional supporter of diverse voices in the future of classical music. In 2022, Stephen was awarded the prestigious Avery Fisher Career Grant, in addition to being the first saxophonist awarded the first prize of the Young Concert Artist Susan Wadsworth International Auditions. He has appeared as soloist with the Cleveland Orchestra, Montreal Symphony, mostly Mozart Festival Orchestra, and the Aspen Festival Orchestra, among many others. He is a founding member of the Canary Quartet, an all-saxophone ensemble that performs regularly together, offering inspiring and uplifting compositions and arrangements. Friends of Chamber Music audience enthusiastically recall their appearance during our 2021-2022 season. The Verona Quartet and Stephen will present Dialogismós, a meditation in music this Saturday, October 11th at 3 p.m. at the Performing Arts Center at the University of Albany. This unique program will explore the various forms of love as understood by the ancient Greeks, with guided meditation incorporated throughout the performance. Tickets are $35 for adults. Students and children attend free, and they may be purchased online at friendsofchambermusic.org or by calling us at 518-971-1581. Thanks to the generosity of our seasoned donors, students and children attend free. Throughout the conversation tonight, if there is something you would like to hear more about or a question you want to ask, please write it in the Q&A below, and I'll try to work it into the conversation. There will also be some designated time at the end for questions from the audience. Thank you, Verona Quartet and Stephen, for joining us this evening.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you.
So let's start with your musical journeys. Can you tell us a little bit about what first drew you to music and what shaped your path moving forward?
Since my mic is on, I'll start. So I didn't start on the viola. I was actually very lucky because my mother taught myself and my two siblings how to read music from before I can remember. Music was really important in my family. It was just really well respected and just part of our family culture. So I don't remember learning to read music, so I consider it like a first language. It feels like so natural to me. And I learned on the piano. We had a violin in the closet, so I was forced to take violin lessons, and I did it kicking and screaming. And I can say now, thank you so much, Mom and Dad, for giving me violin lessons because it led me to the viola eventually. There was a little flute in the mix there. I thought I was going to be a flute player. Well, that pretty much didn't work out after about a month. So, but I always loved music, and music was really, really important to my family. So,
Amazing.
I can go next. Yeah, so I grew up as well in a musical family. My mom's a piano teacher, and my dad's an amateur guitarist. But actually, I grew up really not enjoying music. I think I felt perhaps very apathetic about it in my early years, and I actually wanted to quit when I was 12, and I successfully quit the violin when I was 12. But then when I was 13, my dad said, no, you have to go back to lessons. And they sent me to a new teacher who, I really credit with helping me develop a real love for music. It really helped me understand what it meant to express yourself through your instrument. So for me, that was really quite a turning point, and really the things that helped me to uh, grow my love for music and eventually helped me decide to pursue it as a career were really chamber music and orchestra. When I was in my youth orchestra in high school, I formed a string quartet with my brother and two of my friends, and we took it pretty seriously. So it's pretty awesome that I'm able to continue playing quartet now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and my musical journey started with the piano. I took piano lessons with our church organist when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and um, in middle school, I decided to take band. I really wanted to play the saxophone because it's very beautiful and shiny and cool to a sixth grader, you know. Um, but there were too many saxophonists in the band, and so I was relegated to the clarinet. And but my mom, who also happened to be an elementary school music teacher for her career, um, was willing to allow me to rent a tenor saxophone to have at home. And so I was sort of learning it on my own, and one day came in and was like, far beyond where all the other saxophonists were that were allowed to play. And so my band director allowed me to join the saxophone section. And yeah, didn't look back after that.
Amazing. So, the Verona Quartet, could you tell us a little bit about your name? What does it refer to, and how did you come up with it?
Yeah, sure. The name Verona, well, it came about through quite a bit of discussion. But we were thinking about the fact that for music, for us, music is it's kind of just one of the facets of storytelling that's kind of organic to all of humanity, and we reflect that in different ways, in different art forms. But at the end of the day, it's all the same act. So, in our name as a musical ensemble, we kind of wanted to pay reference to another great art form, and we decided to reference William Shakespeare was one of the kind of greatest authors and storytellers of all time, and he had a love of this place, Verona. And there's also a great tradition amongst string quartets of being named after cities, but we weren't all from the same city, so we had to find a different city to reference.
Wow. And how did you form as a quartet? Where did you all get together?
The quartet we formed, and there's also an interesting story that ties into Stephen here. But we as a quartet formed at Indiana University. We all were there for separate degrees, but we were taking a chamber music course for credit. And it just so happened that while we were there, the Pacifica Quartet had also just started teaching there. And when we played for them, they said, "Oh, it sounds like a quartet. Maybe you should try to do some competitions, maybe take it more seriously because there's promise here." And that really kickstarted a long journey and here we are now. I'll let, well, maybe I'll just say a little bit that the Canary Quartet, which Stephen formed, also formed at Indiana University. And we found ourselves actually doing the same competitions at the same time. And so we actually have a bond that goes back to our student years. So it's really, really great that we get to work with him now as professionals in the music world.
We'll definitely come back to that kind of genesis of both these groups. But I would love to know, and I think our audience would as well, when did you know? I mean, you heard the feedback from the Pacifica Quartet, but was there a moment where you felt like, okay, this group has potential. This is something I want to keep going. And please, also, Stephen, I would love to hear about the Canary Quartet as well.
Well, I'll just say it's funny because I think we look for that aha moment in so many different aspects of our lives. And when you think forward into the future of like, what is my life going to be like, and what kind of job am I going to have, and all of this. I think you imagine that it would be like you would have these aha moments. At the end of the day, it's an incredibly organic, slow process, and involves maybe some boring things like sitting down and really discussing, what are our priorities? Are we all on the same page and all of that? So it's not quite as glamorous as it should be for an effective story. But I think it happened over time, and eventually all of us realized that it was kind of already happening, and we had this love for it. So we just needed to codify the fact that we were going to do this for real. We were really going to commit to it.
And since you mentioned it, I guess I'll talk about Canary too. I'm actually, I told you this before, Michael, but I'm with Canary now, and so I'll be heading to Verona from the guys here. But we, I think we were pretty intentional from before we even started. Um, our tenor player and I went to the same high school actually, and so we knew of each other. And in our first year together at Indiana, um, I was placed on the baritone saxophone in wind ensemble auditions, and Corey heard me playing baritone and was like, "Oh, that's something's going on here." Like he's a good bari player. And Corey happens to be a tenor specialist, which is pretty rare actually in the classical saxophone world for someone to specialize there. And so we were sort of keeping our eyes out for who else was coming in, and our soprano saxophonist Bob Eason was coming in and had already been in a group that had done well at Fishoff and other competitions. And so when we asked him to join us, we were already like, this is going to be a serious group. And so we hit the ground running from the very beginning. And I think with that, we sort of had that conversation that Abigail was talking about, but before we even started, and sort of never looked back.
Great. So we we both of these ensembles that are both performing today founded at the Indiana University Jacob School of Music. When did you guys have your first meet as musicians collaborators? Was it far before this program we'll hear this weekend, or when was the first time?
Oh, um, well, I think our first time collaborating was Chelsea, right? So there's a music festival in New York called the Chelsea Music Festival, and oddly enough, I was subbing with another saxophone quartet that started at Indiana, called the Barcata Quartet, and we played a dodecatet. Is that what I would guess? So it was three. It was
12.
three quartets. It was string quartet, vocal quartet, and saxophone quartet. Um, and that was a pretty crazy first time collaborating there. Some balance issues, but
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun.
Oh, wow. And Stephen, so being a classical saxophonist is still relatively rare, but it's changing. I know it's changing. I've seen lots of groups at the Fishoff. We see about 9 classical saxophone quartets. The past 2 years I've been to Fishoff, so it's gaining popularity. What challenges have you faced kind of breaking into the classical space? Did it feel like a struggle to you? Were there anything that stuck out?
I'll keep it brief. I could talk about this all day, but um, what I will say actually is that I personally have been extremely lucky because winning the Young Concert Artists auditions sort of greased the wheels for me to be able to get in front of presenters and have a career. I would say that the biggest challenge that I see is actually for other saxophonists, because there's not a there's not a precedent in many cases for presenters to be looking for, oh, we need to have a saxophone quartet this season. Why don't we just look and see who's on the market now? And so that's a big part of my my goal as an artist and an advocate for the saxophone is to just keep um, keep dropping the idea of the saxophone into everyone's ear and showing our repertoire and the versatility of the instrument. But yeah, like I said, I've been very lucky and had wonderful opportunities to get to know musicians like the ones before you in the Verona and conductors and all that. And but I hope to allow other saxophonists to have those opportunities as well.
And were you always a classical saxophonist, or did you spend time in other genres on your journey?
Yes. So professionally, I've always been a classical saxophonist. When I was in school, when you start saxophone, you're not really playing any genre. You're kind of like three blind micing, and so and you're playing essential elements, books, and band. So I don't know exactly what that was, but then I also played a lot of gospel when I was in my late middle school and early high school. And even at Indiana, I was a jazz minor. And so I played in the big bands. Um, but the thing for me was just that that was not, I could tell that it wasn't who I was. And so it was always kind of a side thing that I did because everyone told me, oh, you got to make sure you play jazz too. But basically, as soon as I didn't feel like I had to anymore, I didn't anymore.
So, as a founding member of the Canary Quartet, that arrangement is very similar to the string quartet, where all the mechanics of the instruments are very similar. I mean, same kind of setup. How does collaborating with string players in a group like the Verona differ or enhance your playing? Are there different things you're thinking about playing with a string group versus a saxophone group?
Yeah, very, very different things. Um, well, I think in many ways, or in some ways, you have more of a soloist role in some capacities. Um, but of course, you still want to be a chamber musician. And so for me, in my quartet, I play the baritone saxophone. And so I'm often, um, leading in a different way, with the harmonic motion and all of that kind of stuff. And people are listening to me for intonation. And so I'm just thinking in a completely different way. Whereas um, with this program, um, I find that I need to be a little more on the soloistic side of playing, but also logistically, just with the instruments, there's such a difference in the way that they make sound, and so the saxophone is very immediate in its expression, and so it challenges me to maybe be a little bit more nuanced with the beginnings of notes and making sure that I can access some of those lower dynamics to be able to blend well. And it actually makes me think of Chris Theophanides' piece that we'll be performing because he's done such a great job of allowing the string quartet to almost sound like a full orchestra in certain places, which I think gives the saxophone sort of a home. Or I like to think of sound sometimes as like a diamond in a velvet bag, and it feels like the string quartet provides this beautiful velvet bag that the saxophone can like be inside of. Um, so there are all sorts of opportunities to change how we're thinking and playing with this interesting mix of instruments.
And for Jonathan and Abigail, how does a string player kind of incorporate this new sound into their quartet playing?
I just love that analogy of the diamond in a velvet bag. I think that's super apt, and I think that we sense that as well in terms of amplification of the qualities of a string instrument, that what Stephen was just describing about kind of the way you kind of have to manipulate your perspective on the quality of your instrument and to kind of bring out certain aspects of it depending on the ensemble that you're in. I think we feel that very much as well, that it's not that we're trying to be less string-like in order to play with a saxophone. We're actually being more string-like. We're amplifying the qualities that make our string instruments and the string quartet sound the way that they do, to create this incredibly complementary mix. Because they are very, very, very different instruments. And even though, as you described in the beginning, Michael, there's this parallel in a way between the sort of string family of instruments coming together in a string quartet and the saxophone family of instruments coming together in the saxophone quartet, there's that parallel. And when you mix them together, they're very different, but incredibly complementary through this act.
Amazing. And so communication in chamber music is a big thing. I know as a string player myself, we're watching each other's bows and very minute cues and breath as well. For the string players here tonight, there's no bow when you are watching, when we were working with Stephen. Are there any things that you are paying extra close attention to that you don't normally?
Well, I will first say that Steven is so easy to work with and so easy to play with. He's so demonstrative, both in his body language and his sound. And for us, that's the thing that I'm watching and I'm listening for. Number one, I'm watching for his breath, because when Steven, the way he uses his breath, I'm always impressed and amazed by wind players, because from the very beginning, when they first play the first note, they've already planned out, hopefully, and a good wind player would probably plan out exactly how much breath they have, and exactly from the very first note, that breath takes them all the way to the end or to the middle of the phrase, however they decide to do that. And so there's so much information in a breath. And, for us as string players, I always think that cues have to incorporate breath, character, phrasing. And so there's so much information there in just looking at the very first breath that Stephen makes, and then also just with body language, learning how to move together as one. That's very helpful for us as a chamber group. That's something we all work on in chamber music, and you've alluded to a lot of those things: eye contact, like the cues, the body language. Yeah, that's all part and parcel of playing together, because a lot of times you don't have a lot of time to rehearse something on the road. We live in different places, so when we meet, we have to be able to already understand this shared language. It's really cool.
Thank you so much. Could you tell us a little bit of the concept of Dialogismós and how this program came about? Was it inspired by anything, or was this a group effort?
This is a moment of true chamber music where everybody's leaving the floor open for the other person. But I, as a violist, will naturally take the lead. And I'll just start us off, but I hope that my colleagues will jump in. The project, first of all, it came about first and foremost because we wanted to collaborate. We just really wanted to work with Stephen. We called him up and we're like, hey, would you want to do something together? What can we do? And one of the leading inspirations for the program was the fact that the repertoire available for this mixture of instruments is not particularly vast yet. And so that led us to thinking along the lines of, well, how can we support this particular mixture of instruments in its process of sort of establishing itself as a mainstay among the repertoire. And one of the ways is, of course, commissioning, expanding the repertoire. And so that's what led us to thinking about, a composer, and Chris Theophanides was top of the list, recommended by Stephen, actually. And of course, we know his music well, and we're really excited about that. So we were really excited when he agreed to write a piece for us. And the piece that he's written is just kind of it's just extraordinary. It's epic. It's so fun to play and extremely exciting, I think, to listen to as well. I'll let one of my colleagues kind of talk a little bit more about sort of how we ended up with the theme that we did in the arc of the program in the end.
Sure, I can jump in. Well, I remember our first calls, and at that time, but also, still now, I am always trying to think about how a program can leave the audience with something that that they can take with them that's not just, oh, well, that was lovely, wasn't it? And so um, this idea of having a program be directly related to our lives, I think was something that we were discussing a lot. And I, um, at that time, had had a couple of years of a deeper experience with meditation practice, and it had affected some of my music in terms of the compositions that I've been writing, but also it made me want to start programs with meditations to see what that would be like. Because for me personally, oftentimes my greatest musical experiences as a listener come after having done some sort of meditation. Maybe it's 6:30 in the morning and I've just meditated, and then I can actually listen to what's happening, and my judgment is not clouded by everything else that's happening. And so I was really excited about trying that in this case, and really excited that they were willing to try it too. Um, and so yeah, and then the idea of love and meditation and these things were all starting to sort of meld together in a spiritual context. And so I think ultimately the program has sort of zoomed out from specifically meditation or specifically love into creating like an atmosphere that is reverent, I think, throughout the whole program. Um, we do explore the different uh, Greek forms of love, and that's how we chose each piece on the program. But we also, in the commissioning process, we were working with Kirsty, and we told him what the program was about, and asked if he'd be willing to um, write a piece in along these lines with love, and it didn't exactly turn out that way. Um, and it's I think that it's been really exciting to think about how do we conceptualize all of this in that space, because the piece from Chris is really it's a reflection on these paintings by Hieronymus Bosch, which in many of them are pretty dark in general, actually, and it's sort of related to the reflections of what happens on Judgment Day. And so the last time we did the program, it kind of felt like, to me at least, that there's this journey of like, here are all of the ways that one should experience life, with love and playful love, um, lasting, like everlasting love, friendships, all these things. And then the second half is like, here's what happens if you don't. Uh, um, so anyway, there's so much to it, but it's feeling different every single time we perform it, which is really exciting. So
And so you mentioned some guided meditation will be involved. How will we experience this during the performance?
we've actually done it a couple of different ways, but what I think we will do is have uh, I will lead a short meditation before the program, and then hopefully that will set the context for the rest of the program after that.
Amazing. And has putting this program together and performing it a number of times, has it changed your understanding of love or connection or life and death?
That's a great question. I think having the opportunity to play it a few times, because each time is not just a meditation for the audience, it's also for us. And as we play the music, as we get deeper and deeper into it, we are not only trying to to work on playing the piece beautifully, but also to understand it on a deep level. What is the composer trying to say through this? It's not the title says something about the music, but the music itself also says something, about the whole concept of love, whatever in whatever form it might be. So I think actually for us as musicians, whatever piece we play, and in this case, Christopher Theophanidis' piece, really helps us to really connect on a deep level with, and this may sound cheesy, like our innermost feelings, because that is what has to come out and translate onto the stage.
No, I think I'll just add, I think that part of what's interesting about and what sparked us to be really interested in Stephen's suggestion of this mixture of meditation and performance is that we as performers are trained to be able to set ourselves aside in favor of the work that we're producing, whether it's kind of essentially meditating on the music itself or on the person who created it, but and or our collaborators in that moment. So there's a sort of selflessness that's required in order to do what we do, and we're very accustomed to that. But the audience may not be, and so this program kind of gives them the opportunity to experience how we interact with music a little bit more.
We are so excited about this program. Interspersed through this program are a couple of contemporary pieces, one by you, Stephen, Meditation, as well as works by Rena Esmail and The Visions of the Hereafter by Christopher Theophanidis. Could you tell us a little bit about your piece, Stephen?
Gladly. So the entire piece is called Reflections and Exaltations, and I wrote it in dedication to a great violinist who recently passed away named Jeff Nuttall. He was the first violinist of the St. Lawrence String Quartet, and he means a lot to me because, well, for many reasons, but two are jumping to my mind right now. One is that he really believed in me at the very beginning of my sort of compositional career. I have another piece, or I have three quintets now, but my very first quintet for a saxophone and string quartet, he programmed and had never heard it and put it on this Spoleto festival and was like really willing to do it and gave it his all, and that was really exciting to me, and I appreciated that. But also just hearing him play was like a completely transformative experience to me because there was just nothing in between his soul and the audience. A lot of us, myself absolutely included, like you get hung up on this thing that's in your hands that you're trying to use to make music, and he somehow seemed to always be able to transcend that and just connect directly to the audience. They were eating out of the palms of his hands with everything. And so anyway, I wanted to write a piece when he passed to commemorate him. And so this movement, which is the third movement of a four movement piece, comes at a point when essentially the purpose of this piece is to allow people to have time to reflect on their own feelings. The first two movements are much more active and sort of taking from aspects of his personality and thinking through all these kinds of things. And then the third movement becomes a moment of inward repose. And so there's almost like a chant like quality to the saxophone part at the very beginning, which is supposed to feel sort of reverent. Um, and then we sort of float away into this like dreamlike abyss um, that sort of ends the movement. And you'll also hear some what I hope sound like breathing sounds coming from the quartet, whether use the bow on the body of the instrument, creating a sort of like a breathing in and breathing out sound that go along with it as well.
Amazing. So, as champions of new music, there are some unique challenges and rewards of programming and performing these works. What are some of the drawbacks or some things that you may have a harder time than if you were playing a more established piece?
Um, it's funny. I think for us, we don't really compartmentalize necessarily quite that much. It's something that we do very easily in hindsight, and it's how we organize the world and how we are able to walk into a library and know how to find something. But that's, it's not how these things were created in the first place. Beethoven didn't know that he had three periods, but we know it now, kind of thing. So I think for us, in a way, it's all the same. Um, the difference is being able to jump in time stylistically. So that's maybe a shift that we kind of have to put our brains in different places. But the act of playing music, whether it's old or new, it's all the same because it's just a reflection of our humanity, which keeps going.
The Juilliard Quartet at one, I think Robert Mann, if I'm not wrong, said something about this, which I always stuck with me which was that the Juilliard Quartet, they approach new music as if it's been around for hundreds of years, and they approach old music as if it was just composed yesterday. So with our approach to music, it should always be the same. We should always approach anything, whether it was composed in the 1700s or composed recently, with this like open mind and of exploration, not saying, how is this done before, but how would I as an artist want to approach this? And it's a unique challenge with a new piece because there's never been a recording of it, but I think it gives us so much opportunity to craft our own take, our own voice on this piece for the first time. So it's actually very exciting. I think we've enjoyed it very much working on this piece together.
And you mentioned, there's no recording leading up to the rehearsal process or anything. So what happens when there's some uncertainty in the group, or one person might hear it one way, or someone may hear it another way? Yeah. Well, so how do we kind of settle this or agree to perform it a certain way?
Well, we've tried different ways. I think it's a very democratic process, and we're looking at the score, and if someone has one suggestion, uh, they throw it out, and I pretty much always try it, and see how it feels. That's the fun thing about music is that you can't talk about it too much. You kind of have to do it and then just see. And I have to say that our rehearsals are particularly joyful, I think, um, because there is a lot of experimentation and there's a lot of maybe finding what the line is, like let's go all the way to the edge and see what this cliff is like. Whoop, let's step back a little bit and maybe try this other thing. So it's a lot of experimentation and um, deciphering and um, just get like it's sort of like just getting to know a new person. You got to see how will they react to this, how do they react to that, what's what's their true nature, things like that.
And do you feel more freedom working with a living composer? I mean, you can call them up, you can text them, you can email them, you'll hopefully get a response. Is that something that you feel like helps the performance, or do you take advantage of that? Or is it more like they give it to you and do what you want with it?
The working relationship between performer and living composer is different depending on the people, of course. I think we have a great luxury to be able to play music by living composers and to have that opportunity. And while we were in the initial phase of learning the piece, uh, Chris's piece, we did have some conversations a little bit back and forth with him. But it's kind of also magical to think about the fact that we have like Haydn quartet, and we can't talk to Haydn, but he was such an amazing um, master of the craft, the code that we all speak, that all the answers are there. And actually, when you start to really study these things, you kind of feel like you know the person. And great composers from hundreds of years ago and great composers like Chris today, it's the same thing, where they are just utter masters of this code, and we all speak this code fluently. And when you're really delving into it and taking every single marking that, they put a piece of themselves on the page. It was a blank page before they put themselves on it. When you really take it seriously and you take it apart, you start to feel like whether they're in the room or not, you're actually like you're having a conversation with a real person. You're talking to them. So
Thank you so much. So, after your concert on Saturday, on Sunday, October 12th, you will present a chamber music masterclass at the SUNY Schenectady School of Music. Could you tell us a little bit on your view of the importance of engaging with the community outside of the concert hall? Is this something you guys think about?
Yeah, it's something, as musicians, I think it's a privilege and a responsibility to go out there into the community and to share our love for music, and I always say like that all you really have to do is just sit in front of students and tell them. You don't have to convince them of anything, just show them, like Stephen was saying, how Jeff Nuttall was just, there was just no wall between him and the audience. They could just immediately sense the infectious joy and the infectious just the emotion coming from him, the soul of his music. And I think that's what we should be doing, not just in concert halls but also going to schools. And I think for many of us, that's how we caught the bug. We were sitting in those audience seats and watching musicians play. I remember when I was in Singapore, the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra came to Singapore, and there was a master class. They did a master class for the young students who were in the Singapore Youth Orchestra, and my string quartet played, and and about 20, I want to say 20 years later, actually 2 summers ago, I was at the Green Mountain Music Festival, and I was at a party and I saw a very familiar face, and and I said, and I played for you 20 years ago, and that was a really important. It was so important that I remember I was talking to him, and I realized his name was Nardo Poi. He was a violinist in the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra, and it made such an impression on me. And maybe even in the moment, I didn't realize how important that master class was for me, but it definitely shaped me moving forward, for a chamber music career. So those moments, we never know who is going to be in the room, who we're going to touch and to impress upon them the love for music. So I think it's an important thing to do for all of us.
Are there um, how do you see these types of programs kind of shaping the wider community and appreciation of classical music beyond the young student?
You mean the program that we're going to be performing on our main concert, or
Outreach programs.
oh, I see. Um, I think, well, it really depends. One of the things that I love about doing community engagement is that you really have to um, react to whoever shows up in that room right then, and think about what do these, what would be the best thing that I could offer these people here right now? And so sometimes that is, of course, what piece you're going to perform. Sometimes it's talking about what that piece means to you, and the fact that what you're about to play is not just a like, oh, you're really good at something, and you're just doing it because it's hard, and that's really impressive that you can do it. But oh, there's actually, you know, something about humanity that's being conveyed with this, and maybe that person can come away and have another way to process, things that happen in the world. Um, and so, and oftentimes I find as well, I, in my general stance with outreach, I love to go to um, minority communities, because I think for myself, a lot of people that I grew up with just feel like this music isn't for us, and so I like to be able to play, a gospel song that I grew up with right next to this piece of classical music, and talk about how the soulfulness that one might experience in one genre is not, you know, uh, owned by anybody. There are ways that we can take these feelings and explore them in different ways, and I think that that has often been really important for me in the past, to see other people doing that, and so I also find it important to just share my own genuine love of this kind of music, and really normalizing it.
Thank you so much. At this time, we'd like to open the floor to any audience questions. Feel free to type them into the Q&A below. In the meantime, I have a question. Do you see yourselves doing more interdisciplinary or themed programs in the future?
I'm assuming you mean between saxophone and string quartet, and not just sort of generally.
Both.
Oh. Well, okay, so I'll speak about the Verona Quartet a little bit, maybe more so. Um, I would say the answer to that question is yes, absolutely. That's very important to us, and obviously I kind of mentioned this at the beginning when you were asking about our name, and the importance to us of music just being one avenue through which we can kind of express these deeply human things that transcend genre. So one of the ways in which we do that, besides just our name, it is a lot of projects that are interdisciplinary, sometimes within the discipline, but exploring kind of the edges of what people think of as traditional string quartet, even though we consider ourselves to be a traditional core string quartet, but kind of reimagining and redefining what that actually means and what that can include, because as time marches forward, the opportunity expands of what we can incorporate into the core that is string quartet. So we do that through lots of interdisciplinary work, and we certainly intend to continue that.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about your particular instrument? Is it your only one? Do you travel with it?
Um, well, so even on the concert this Saturday, I'll be playing two different instruments. I'll be playing the soprano saxophone and the alto saxophone. I own five instruments, well, five saxophones, seven instruments, um, and uh, because the saxophone is a family, sort of like the string quartet, like I have to be able to play all of them, because if you have to play bolero with an orchestra, you need to have your soprano and your tenor. I play baritone in my quartet, and alto weirdly enough, is the one that is considered the main saxophone when you're in school. And so, yeah, I play all those. And then I also, um, mostly for composition, I play a lot of piano as well. And I still have my clarinet from back in the day. So,
So I guess we can hope that we'll hear a cello solo from Jonathan and Abigail soon, since they're in this.
Just one trick pony, violin and a bow.
Although our cellist can play the castanets, but that's a whole other program.
That's true, yes.
What about your instrument, Abigail?
So yeah, I think I mentioned at the beginning that I journeyed through all kinds of other instruments, but viola is the one that called to me, and I have a viola that I've had for a number of years now, made by an American maker named William Wedby. It's a contemporary instrument. There are some really beautiful contemporary violas out there. Something about the viola that makers are drawn to now, and we're grateful for it. So mine was made in 2007 in Chicago, and that is the instrument that I'll be bringing with me for this performance.
Yeah.
Oh, for me, I have three violins. I of course only travel with one of them. So one of the violins was made in 1815 in Paris, uh, by a maker named Nicolas Lupo. Another one was actually made in 1686 by an Italian maker named Joseph Guarneri Felice Andrea. Um, Interestingly, the one I'm playing on right now with the quartet, I was made in November and this past year, and it was made by a collaboration between two makers, Antoine Nedelec and Ryan Soltis. And I was in New York City looking for instruments because, as the instruments are such unique, they all have such unique voices, and you have to find an instrument that sounds great on its own, but also sounds great in a quartet. And so I was in a New York showroom, and I tried this instrument that was made in November, and instantly, I think I knew that it was a special one. And I brought it back to Oberlin, Ohio, where the quartet lives. And I played it with the quartet, had a few people listening to it, and they said, buy it. They said, get it. So that's the instrument now that I'm playing on in the quartet I'm traveling with.
We are so looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So our last question of the evening, what do you think the role of an artist is in today's world? Is this something that you think about for yourself, such as what is my role, or what are my goals as an artist and a global citizen?
Michael, that can't be the last question. It's huge. Oh my goodness. Maybe I'll filibuster a little so my colleagues can think about what to say. Oh, it's a lot. Okay, I'll say this. I think that we feel a great sense of responsibility actually, and we've talked a lot about contemporary music, and commissioning new works. And that's certainly one of the areas where we feel, among many other areas, but where we feel an enormous sense of responsibility because we are making a determination by deciding to bring a new work into being and then committing to playing it and traveling with it and giving it legs and life. We're basically deciding that the direction that our field is going to go in, and that is a huge responsibility, and we don't take it lightly. It's weighty, and it requires some experimentation and risk taking and faith, and sometimes that will follow that, and it has a natural end with a certain piece or whatever, but we never know. So we're sort of delving into the future with our best knowledge and effort, and we don't know where it will end up.
I will say that specifically in today's world, one of the things that I love most about being an artist is um, just being a representative of caring, like there are so many ways to be cynical, and to feel like, oh, this isn't going to matter, everything's, you know, going down the tubes, but just to really have these moments where everyone in the concert hall is here and we are making a humble offering of, we really care about this and we think this is worth celebrating. I think that ties back to the Verona's name, or like with just art in general. One of my favorite things is just consuming art of any kind, because I love to think about, like, if I go to art museum, just imagining the painter or the sculptor standing right there next to it, having just finished it, and the fact that they put their genuine human effort into this thing and believed that it should exist. I think that that's just such a beautiful thing, and um, we are proponents of that. Every day with every performance, everything that we write, every lesson. It's just, things matter. you know, and I think that's an important thing.
Thank you, Stephen.
Um, so everyone said something so well. I don't know what I would add, um, except that I really do believe that we function best as a society when we are looking at a common goal, and so us as chamber musicians, I think we are a kind of a microcosm of that. We come from such different places, different countries, different cultures. The fact that we're able to get together, the five of us, and be able to look at this one thing and say, how do we approach this in a unified way? And the self really is the least important thing on stage. We are there for one another. We are there in service of the music. And we had a class last week where we talked to our students and we said, there's no better art form, this group of music students, but also college students who were just playing music because they loved music and they weren't doing it as a major. But there's really no better practice than chamber music to teach you uh, how to be a more, like you said, caring individual, a more aware individual, not just of yourselves, but of other people. So I think that is something that I always hold in very high regard, that responsibility as a chamber musician, perhaps.
Thank you so much, Stephen, Jonathan, and Abigail, for joining me this evening. We are so looking forward to your appearance here on the series. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight. We will see you all on Saturday at the University of Albany at 3 p.m. for this wonderful concert. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.